Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. Okay, so I think we're both so fired up for Texas, Ohio State. You and I love college football, and I can't wait for that game. So the Michigan penalties came down, and basically Harbaugh can't coach in college football for the next decade. He won't. They're probably going to have to write, $30 million in checks. They didn't have to vacate any wins. The best punishment you can give a huge brand is cash. I mean, they can make payments. But I got to tell you, John, I know I'm supposed to really be outraged when the NCAA says, hey, listen, they were out of control. They didn't follow rules. John, the coaches I've talked to with the transfer portal, it is so sketchy. And the NIL is the wild, wild west. That Connor Stallions, I know I should be bothered, but I think the penalty of pay like $20-30 million, I'm fine with it. And I know I sound like I'm a Big Ten homer here, but I would say this. We all know the SEC was paying guys for years through the church. I mean, Nick Saban basically stopped recruiting late cycle Ole Miss players because if he couldn't get them committed early, he knew he'd lose late. He knew he had no chance to win. They'd get paid out. So, and then, Hugh Freeze got busted. I mean, I went on the air multiple times. Ole Miss was not the only school, but they were the worst offender with Hugh Freeze, who, by the way, gets rehired again because nobody really cares. But in the end if you can pay high school football players, I don't care. Nothing's illegal. I don't care. Do you feel as strongly as I do, or are you bothered that they were a little bit of an outlaw program with Harbaugh?
Yeah, I mean, I do not. I'm actually surprised that people still listen to the NCAA. That they're not in charge of the money generation of college football. Obviously, they have more of a pull when it comes to basketball. They have a lot with the NCAA
March
tournament,
Madness, yeah.
but it's not. Yeah, it's not called the NCAA college football playoffs. Like, so why? Think how stupid it is that Sharon Moore got suspended for games 3 and 4 because they play Oklahoma. Like, what are we doing? How does this make any sense? And the NCAA it's been laughable for a long time. It's like, no, I witnessed John Calipari go to the finals. Like, you can't just take that away. Reggie Bush, I saw him. He's one of the best college football players I've ever seen. You can't take away his Heisman. What are we talking about? Because he took an apartment from an eight. Think how dumb that sounds now. You talked about that today. But Michigan, who has a quarterback, which I would imagine is going to start, the Underwood kid, who they stole from LSU because Larry Ellison cut a $15 to $20 million check. And we're mad about a guy with binoculars and an iPhone sitting in the 70th row at an Iowa-Michigan State football game. And the other thing is I always defended Belichick. When I got to the NFL with Andy, like stealing signs, because technology changed a lot over the last 10 years. Now it's like everyone's in the headset. But before, stealing signs, everyone was doing it. Now, Belichick was a little more brazen on the sideline, but he was doing something no different than everyone else was doing. Everyone had sign stealing ability and tried to decode everything and had people with cameras. So no one, you notice people in the NFL weren't that offended. Who was offended? Fans, Roger Goodell, who's never, and this is the pushback with NFL people with Roger, great with business, but he doesn't know like the inner workings of play calls, player acquisition, the strategy of football. That's his job. So sometimes like bounty get overreacted. I think a lot of people in the NFL, it's like, yeah, this is football. I think a lot of people in college football. Now, did Michigan just beat Ohio State when he was gone with no Connor Stallions? Like, it's just, they got really good players. They got a bunch of NFL guys, but I just can't get over people still listening to the NCAA. It baffles me. Like, why does football need them at this 2025? I don't get it, because clearly they had to just wave their hands and wave the flag on all of the money stuff. So why are we them about anything else?
I will make a prediction in the next 3 years. Some venture capital group will buy March Madness, and they won't change much. They may shrink it a little bit to like 58 teams or something. That, fewer teams is probably better for a little leaner tournament. But, I just heard a story yesterday from a very good network source that there is a lot of momentum to have like a 24 or 28 team playoff. And my loyalty has always been to more big games. And you just can't get me worked up. Auburn, Alabama, it's great, but it's regional. And the highest rated game last year, I think it was Texas, Georgia. That's not a rivalry. It wasn't Texas, Oklahoma. So I'm not, when I heard everybody say, well, you're going to kill the rivalries. Listen, if you're a Michigan fan in Ohio State, did that game feel smaller last year to you when Michigan upset Ohio State? It didn't feel smaller to me. No. So, I mean, the reality is when the Rams play the Niners, it's intense. They could play 3 times a year. Years ago when the Steelers and Ravens and Ray Lewis was around and so was Big Ben, they play 1 year 3 times. The third game felt bigger than the first 2 because it was a playoff game. So there's just certain things in 2025 I can't get worked up over. Somebody having pot in their car, same-sex marriage, NCAA coming down on payments to players or any kind of scandal. Like, we've just graduated to just understanding the world we live in. I said it today, unless you're like a cop from Reno 911, you got a roach in your car. Nobody cares. That mattered in the 70s. And if you can buy high school players, I don't give 2 shits about somebody with an iPhone in the crowd. I don't care if you have 40 of them. I don't care.
I do think the 24-28 team college football playoff, that's where I might get a little worked up. We saw the 12 team, that first round was a blowout. There have been arguments about 16-24. And again, I love football as much as the next guy. But doesn't that feel a little extreme? I mean, we get a lot of average to below average teams in the dance in that situation.
Okay.
It's been your argument for March Madness forever. We always scream over first in, last out, or whatever. Those teams never matter. Right, who are your 1 and 2 seeds? They usually determine the journey.
I think you'd have to make it half the size of March Madness because football is a sport of attrition. So the little guy, it has no chance in a 28-team tournament to ever win like a third straight game against a bigger, deeper roster. I think the perfect number is about 16. I wouldn't be bothered by 20. I think if you get to 28. You'd have to give the top like 4 seeds. I don't want Georgia playing Liberty. I'm just not interested in that at all. I mean, Notre Dame played Indiana, and that was kind of embarrassing for the Hoosiers, I thought.
It was very. I mean, Boise State, Penn State had a guy drafted in the top 10 at running back, and he had no chance. You know why? Because the offensive lineman had no chance to block the Penn State guys. And that's always going to be the big problem. You get a 28-team playoff. But here's the other thing. It's like, it's one thing if the 4th or 5th team from the Big Ten and the SEC get in. But when you're taking the 3rd and 4th team from the Big 12 and the ACC, that's when it could get really ugly. And we don't need to see those teams play. Now, I get it's all about television ratings and football. I was thinking today, watching Sunday Night Football with Caleb Williams, what do you think the first 30 minutes of that football game did? I mean, it just had to blow everything out of the water on Sunday night.
I'll look it up right now.
So the advantage, I never argue against like more of these games. Like, I completely understand or argue against the people that want more football in terms of working at the networks or part of the revenue generation because it's only going to bring in more eyeballs. It's like, listen, I hate the doubleheader on Monday night. I think a huge part of playing Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football is getting the solo game. But their argument is you put the doubleheader, it accumulates millions upon millions of more people watching football. And that's the business Roger and ESPN or Fox or whoever's in. But sometimes the product does get worse when I get a doubleheader on Monday night. I don't know who's asking for it beside we're just going to get more people, we can sell more ads and make more money.
Yeah, I mean, I know people get worked up over my take on college football. I'm not a traditionalist. But I've always truly felt that if you're absolutely honest with yourself, Alabama fan, Ohio State fan, you get bored with the season. Because the Michigan game is great, the Penn State game is great, the Oregon game was great. But there's about 6 times that you're paying for a game that is over at half. And if you're really honest, I would, and I, this is something I pay attention to. On any given Sunday, the 1 o'clock window, those are not the best teams in the league. That's a lot of Tennessee. That's a lot of Carolina. That's a lot of, Chicago,
Saints.
Washington, Saints, Washington, pre Jaden Daniels. Any given Sunday, there are 4 electric finishes in the 1 o'clock window. And then you're getting standalone Fox games, CBS games, Sunday night game, Monday night game, 30. You get at least 6 tremendous games every weekend in the NFL. And that's out of how many games? I mean, how many total games do you have? Like 14, 12? So in college football, you have 135, 140 Division I programs. There are weekends that you get. Now, again, you probably get close games with teams nobody's watching, but you may get 6 great games a weekend. And a lot of times 4 of the 6, can be like Army against, Boston College, and it goes down to the wire. That's not the highest quality of football. So to me, I'm rooting for anything that gives me, like I said, I get now Oregon against Michigan and Penn State and Ohio State, or Oregon against Washington State, Cal, and Stanford. To me, it's just not a hard choice. I want more quality.
Yeah, I'm probably more of a traditionalist than you when it comes to college football, but it's over. Like, the battle has been won and those traditions are done, right? We are going to continue to merge. And I think we have to acknowledge, how do we get the best games? I'm all for not allowing some of these matchups anymore, basically mandating that you have to play your peers in the non-conference games. And maybe that, if we go to a bigger playoff schedule of 20 or 24 teams, then Alabama would never play a Mercer. Because remember, Saban used to bitch and moan about no one being in the stadium at kickoff.
That's right.
Well, it's like, well, Nick, you're playing Cal Poly, the Sisters of the Poor, and UC Davis. And then he'd go, well, our schedule's so hard. And it's true. Your SEC schedule is hard, but you still got 3 or 4 other home games that no one cares about. And let's face it, there are a couple SEC games, Vanderbilt before last year and a couple, Mississippi State, where you're going to kick the crap out of them. So it's not going to be an enjoyable experience for the consumer. So how do we fix that? And maybe going to 24 teams enables us to, because where we're headed is going to be the NFL light, right? We're going to have 2 major conferences, and they're all going to play each other. And that's where, like, even the Boise States and the New Mexicos, they're eventually just going to be playing. Like, there's just going to be Division I, and then there's going to be like Division I AA. Yeah. And right now, there's still kind of that middle ground of some of these teams. I don't think they will exist in 5-10 years, because financially they won't be able. It's like business, right? I mean, think how often Amazon or Target or some of these, big companies, Oracle, Meta, have just wiped people out. And that's kind of what, like, Ohio State and Alabama and USC and Oregon. And it's why I read a story recently that, like, Duke and North Carolina were trying to get to the SEC. Well, they're not going to let Clemson and Florida State just go, like, we're coming with you. We got to follow the money if we want to survive.
Yeah, and I think change is inevitable. I mean, you and I think, are pretty safe when it comes to AI. But I mean, look at what's happening in AI. Like, I just read a story in the Atlantic today how AI has changed universities and academia, and 100% of students use it. And, universities, and they were quoting some of the kids talking about it. And they're like, listen, man, I work hard, but sometimes I just want to go lift weights. I don't want to write another 16-page essay. And which is, a lot. I mean, do you remember anything from college? A lot of it's nonsense. I really
nothing.
do. I think finally, over the course of my life, people have come to terms with a lot of college and a lot of universities as status. Unless you're a doctor or unless you're a lawyer and you're getting a certain license or degree. But in a lot of instances, you end up getting in sales. But I think, like, AI, job displacement, like, this is the way of the world. And sports fans, like, I never got adults that collected baseball cards. I guess there's a financial benefit. It's a watered down, diluted market now. But I think you just have to get comfortable with sports are going to change. And I felt for years that boxing was screwing the fans. And here comes UFC and knocked it out. And I felt for years that college football was the worst run $8 billion a year sport. Boom. The network stepped in, Fox and ESPN, NBC, and said, yeah, we're going to take it over. We're going to make the decisions. And so I don't have a problem with it. If you're a well-run company, like people can bitch about the NBA. They just signed a $76 billion 11-year deal. You can complain about the NBA, but nobody in venture capital country is going to buy the teams. The league is incredibly profitable. College football was a poorly run mess. Boxing was a mess. Horse racing's a mess. Golf, with the PGA being a charity, never took care of its stars. So look at what's been upended. Poorly run college football, poorly run boxing, and the poorly run PGA. Stuff that's well run, nobody's buying Meta, right? Like nobody's buying Amazon. Like they're buying companies that are, vulnerable. So, or significantly smaller. So I don't feel bad for sports that change. They only change when they're poorly run.
But my question then is, when does it ever end? Like in the NFL, we can make fun of the Brown family, or I feel like the Davis family. Mark has pivoted much better with Tom and his group coming in, so they got more financial backing. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys and the 49ers and the New York Giants, they're partners with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Arizona Cardinals. Right. But if you're Ohio State and now USC and Oregon come, you start looking around like, why are we carrying Maryland and Minnesota? And that's the problem. In Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida go, what do we need Mississippi State for? Vanderbilt, great academics. Who gives a shit? We're not even going to be associated. Our kids aren't even going to go to school in 5 or 10 years. We're just going to have a siloed football program. And that's the problem with college athletics is there is a lot of kinks in the business plan because how many programs truly carry it and can splinter, where Jerry can say all he wants is like, we're the most watched team or the Chiefs now, but you're in business with all these other people. And that's how you sell the business model to the networks. In college football, you buy the Big Ten, but I mean, you've been at Fox, like they've rode Michigan and Ohio State. If Maryland disappeared tomorrow, besides Scott Van Pelt, who would notice? And that's what like that still matters to me. I mean, I grew up around cows. Read the Athletic article on Andrew Luck. It's pretty good about him going to become the GM and a lot. It's a really good article. It came out today. If Stanford football just disappeared tomorrow, no one would notice. And it's like, how long is this sustainable when everyone is just kind of backstabbing? The big guys are just constantly like ultimately Jerry can't ass out Mike Brown. He just can't, right? Or Jed York can't just screw Michael Bidwell. Like they're all in business together. And in college, they kind of are, but kind of not. I mean, why did USC and UCLA just kind of piggybacked off USC, but USC was just, we're not carrying Washington State anymore. Screw you. So why can't USC and Ohio State and Michigan just go, why are we carrying Minnesota and Maryland? I'm picking on Minnesota. Maybe they're bigger than I give them credit for, but it's a couple, and we just start trimming the fat. And it's the fat's going to keep getting trimmed until we have 25 programs. This is Alabama, Florida, Clemson. That's where it feels like inevitable, right?
Yeah, I mean, but like, listen, the English Premier League has relegation. Like, I just think, like Major League Baseball right now has, and for my entire life has had 6 to 8 teams that can't really compete when the season starts. So baseball has no salary cap. No salary cap. So this should really be a sport in which big markets dominate. Yet the Milwaukee Brewers are clearly the best team in baseball. The Dodgers, until they just swept a series, were reeling. The Yankees and the Mets, they're chasing, the Blue Jays. The Yankees are. The Mets are no longer in first place. Not really a very good baseball team. So I think in the sport of baseball, in which it really should be a have and have not sport, if you look at the last 11 World Series champs, the Yankees aren't in there. The Dodgers are in twice. One of those is sort of the much maligned COVID World Series title. It's the Rangers, the Astros, the Nats. The Royals are in there, and the Yankees aren't. And so my take is Iowa football has never run the sport, has never been hugely valuable to the sport, but will always produce quality teams because it matters to the people of that state, and they'll always be a viable 7 to 8 win program, and that's what they've always been. And if you look at the history of college football, you can go back 30 years. There's only one new top 10 program, Oregon. That is it. It's always been ridiculously top heavy. But the difference is when it was top heavy and we were paying guys behind the scenes, or it was top heavy because of topography, geography, or population centers, everybody was okay with it. But when things get lopsided because of money, we feel it's very unfair. And the truth is, Ohio has always had far more good players in it than Indiana. And Indiana's a basketball state, and Ohio's a football state. And the Buckeyes and Michigan have been kicking everybody's ass in that conference for my entire life. But now it feels like it's money that's separating them. And I think people get worked up over money. They just, especially men, people don't like to talk about money. And the truth is, the Big Ten has been lopsided my entire life. Since I started watching sports in 1972, it's been, for years, Penn State was independent. They joined it later. It's always been. There's been the occasional Barry Alvarez, Wisconsin team, or Hayden Fry had a good Iowa team that goes to the Rose Bowl. It's been Buckeyes and Wolverines my entire life.
I do think part of sports, though, especially college football, which is, in the NFL, a big upset is in the playoffs or the Super Bowl. Upsets happen all the time in the regular season. Regular season games one game doesn't determine your success. Where in college football, now it determines less of your success. Ohio State lost to Michigan. It didn't ruin their season. They still won the national championship. But some of the biggest moments in my life have been Appalachian State beating Michigan, has been, some of the Aaron Rodgers almost beating the undefeated Pete Carroll team, and then Vince Young, like an upset happening in college football. And the little guy, and whether that's, Minnesota or a Maryland, beating Ohio State once every 6-7 years. Last year, Vanderbilt beating Alabama for the first time in 50 years. And you do need, like Tiger Woods needed Chris DeMarco every once in a while to give him a run for his money. That's good drama. Ultimately, this is the drama of Michigan, Ohio State can't play every single game, right? So who's Ohio State or Alabama or Oregon going to play? Last year I was on the edge of my seat thinking, is Ashton Genty and Boise State going to beat Oregon? Which is ironic. They beat them multiple times in the past with Chris Peterson.
Right.
But it felt like this is going to be pretty nuts. And you just wonder if that goes away and it just becomes, it feels like it's going to become like 40 teams. It's just going to be every single week. It's like, well, Ohio State plays their non-conferences now: Florida, Georgia, Clemson, and SC.
But I'm going to argue you're going to watch that and it's going to get bigger ratings than playing Purdue again. And that's my takeaway. Like, I watched so much college football last year. I loved college football last year. You and I both really are heavy college football leaners. We love the sport. John, I went through about an 8-year cycle with Clemson, Georgia, Bama. I was watching less. The sport was incredibly lopsided. Well, now Texas gets to play Bama, LSU, Georgia, Florida. I get USC schedule, Penn State, Michigan. Like, to me, I had more fun watching college football last year than I have had in a decade. And so I'll go back to this. I know it's money and it makes people uncomfortable. But if you're telling me Ohio State, let's just do this. Let's do this. So I'm going to read Ohio State's schedule. Texas, Grambling State, Ohio, at Washington, at Illinois, at Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, Michigan. You know the 2 games you'd get rid of tomorrow? Grambling State and Ohio. And everybody says, oh, that's part of the fabric. Those are the 2 games you would eliminate immediately. And the third game that you'd probably eliminate would be Minnesota at Ohio State, because it'd probably be a blowout. So my takeaway is, in the new world, if we have a bigger playoff, you're going to get more Texas, Ohio State, more Ohio State, Washington, more Ohio State, Wisconsin, more Penn State, Ohio State, and more Michigan, Ohio State. You're just going to get more of those games, are you not?
Yeah, I'm not arguing for Grambling or Ohio to be on the schedule. I do wonder there has to be some hierarchy though of like eventually are they backstabbing the Purdue's, the Minnesotas and Marylands and killing them all off and we're just talking 25, 30 teams just playing in college football. I mean that's what like D1AA almost feels like, right? North Dakota State, Montana. And I just wonder like there has to be some sort of balance. I have no problem with you're not allowed to play Grambling if you're Ohio State. And Ryan Day would be like, well, we're opening up against Texas. I'd say, great. Ask Sean Payton. He's like, yeah, we open against the Chiefs, then we play the Chargers. I mean, welcome to football. But that's the way college football works, and that's always Saban's excuse. It's always, and I respect all these programs that play real non-conference games.
So do I.
But they do that, and then they justify their other three non-conference games are against me, you, and the dude down the street. And they're like, see, we played Texas on a neutral field. I'm like, great. Then you played three teams that, I mean, you feel bad for those kids. Like, is it safe for Grambling and Ohio to play Ohio State? I mean, I don't know if it is, but that's just the nature. I guess my ultimate thing is, and this is why college football has been, it's been really successful. I mean, it's the second biggest sport in America in terms of viewers, but in terms of it's chaotic, a lot like golf. The leadership, everyone just kind of stabbing each other in the back out for themselves. We're in the NFL, even the NBA, you're kind of with it as a group. And and maybe that's just the nature of their business model with these conferences. It was always destined as it got this popular to be so fractured and be through this period of time. But I don't think we're even close to being done. Like the traditionalists, they lost. But I don't think we're close to being done to being situated. Like I think we still got 5, 10, 20 years of a lot of moving parts here.